and invests $100,000 in their creative economy. And the city of Augusta, which actually built their public art program around the best practices of art around Roswell, so that's a really nice feather in the cap, also invest $100,000 of taxpayer dollars. Looking at the timeline itself for the execution, this is very much the nuts and bolts of its process. It is a community engagement effort, first and foremost. So this assumes a project approval beginning of October. This is an ambitious fundraising cycle, but we do believe it's achievable. So this initiates the community engagement outreach to the artist communities, the different neighborhoods, so forth, with its national outreach, local, regional, national targets for artists. But this also slots in with all of our other project lifecycle work. In addition, while this handles the purely visual project work, there's also all of that supports the project. So that's the photography, brochures, website, social media, the audio tours via AutoCast, flyers, press releases, walking tours, biking tours that promote both the touring exhibit of Art Around as well as the permanent collection. So that is all I have prepared for you this morning. I will leave you with some very cute also social media notes, because ultimately, as I had said, this next year we really want to bring it kind of getting back to the tradition and embracing Art Around Roswell as that cultural tradition, that linchpin, and feeling that sort of festival environment year-round, and it's throughout the city. So with that, I will take any questions.
Is there any questions for Councilmember Judy?
Thank you for the presentation. So in doing my research and speaking to you all about this, I was shocked, which I think is an understatement, but that if we don't fund this, that those pads will be empty next year and people will just see concrete pads around the city of Roswell. When you go to any other city around that's thriving, they have public art out and about, people taking pictures, etc. I wish we wouldn't have gotten to this point where we would have empty concrete pads, but I don't think we understood the breadth of, or the problem that this is going to be gone, at least for the short term until it's funded again, should we not fund this. That's concerning to me. As you can see in these, you see people taking pictures every day out around the city in front of these pieces of art. I think some people might not like the art that's there, but I guess it's in the eye of the beholder. And some people love different places. So for me, having empty pads around the city is very concerning. So I appreciate your presentation today, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mayor Henry.
Where is your fundraising? Because the last time we had a conversation with you all, and I believe your board had a conversation with you all, that you need to rely less on the city and more on private funding.
Yeah.
So how have you proceeded or accomplished that?
Sure. Both in terms of our operational funding as well as project-based funding. One of the things that we've had trouble doing is doing Art Around specific grant requests or fundraising requests because of the uncertainty. So what we have done is approach overall grant support. So for example, if I go back to the slide, we've received $32,000 in general operating support already, which include Art Around Roswell and already contributing to Art Around Roswell to make up that delta. The reason it's not a very specific number as yet is because even to those grantors, we had to say, well, we believe Art Around will probably happen. We're not certain. When we know it will happen, we'll be able to attribute funds from this grant and put it towards that. But that is the intent there in terms of our overall support for all of our programs so that we can also funnel that into Roswell.
So you're still relying on the city of Roswell to support these projects? And you're not raising private funds to support these projects? Oh no,
we are raising private funds, and in fact, the amount, just over close to $42,000 will be completely out of private and public, meaning fundraise, what I'm calling grants or public, but foundation support will all be raised.
So is that reducing the amount of money you're asking the city for?
No, the amount asked to the city is $58,000. That covers the project support. So the full extent of the project, in terms of the artist stipends, all the actual nuts and bolts of the work is covered by that city request.
So the money you're raising is not going toward this project. The money you want from the city of Roswell will go to this project, correct?
The money we want, that we are asking from the city, will exclusively go to this project for this budgetary request.
So the money you're raising will not go to this project?
It will go to our match dollars that we raise also. The total project cost is $96,000. So I'm sorry if I'm not being clear. So 96 is the total project cost. The 58 that is requested for the city is going exclusively into the nuts and bolts of Art Around Roswell.
Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, thank you. Just having been involved in this from the very beginning, I know one of the things with the sculpture tour is that once the program has been identified, the sculptures have been identified and selected, knowing that that program is going to be live and those sculptures are there, makes it much easier to go out and ask businesses to sponsor a particular sculpture in a particular location. So, they can see what they're getting. They know that they'll have signage and they'll have their name associated with all the promotions for it. And I know in previous years we've had really great success with Roswell local businesses, as well as some national names that have wanted to get involved and to sponsor sculptures when they know that it's a sure thing and that the city is backing it and that it has public support.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I think my questions are directed to Director Luckett. There he is. And possibly to you as well. Your fiscal year is June?
Yeah, end of June, July 1.
Okay. Can you give us a recap of the request and what was allocated in the budget? And then also, is this request looking back, or is this a prospective request in advance for the next budget year? I guess that's where I'd like clarification.
So the Roswell Arts Fund submitted requests. I believe it was exceeding about $200,000 for the FY22 budget process, and the mayor and council approved $50,000 in total funding that was for operational support.
And so your original request was 200, and the city approved 50,000 from the last budget, and now you're coming back for 58
Yes, in addition.
in addition. And did you revise your budget for fiscal year?
So the 58, it was the entirety of the 200. If you take that entire package, part of that was 50,000 for operating, 58 for Art Around, and then there were other supplementary projects, placemaking and so forth. So we extracted from that the 50 from operating, and then we took the 58 from Art Around sculpture program. So that number hasn't been revised. The reason that wasn't updated is, in fact, and just extracted from previous, is, as you saw from FY20, we received 58 support already for this project. And for this year, we actually think we can make greater efficiencies, produce 10 new sculptures versus last year we were able to do like the 5x2 model. So it's more of rather than rejiggering the numbers, we're actually, in a way, asking for less by virtue of the maker dollars being more expensive going into this year. So $58,000 is kind of the number that we're sticking with going forward.
So, and looking prospectively into the future, do you expect your next request in the next budget season to be the same or lower from the city?
Actually, I would really relish the opportunity to look at Art Around as a project holistically and look at where it needs to go for the future, and then we develop the budget together as that partnership. So I very much think we can rethink the amount of commitment and changing for fiscal years to come.
Thank you. And Mr. Luckett, Councilmember Wilsey had indicated that there our funds in the hotel motel fund. Can you elaborate on that,
Yes.
please?
So our hotel motel tax revenues did a little better than we anticipated. And we have accumulated some fund balance in that fund. So we do have about $150,000 in unrestricted fund balance in our hotel motel tax fund.
And one last question, and what are the other options, or where are those funds eligible to be allocated for?
Those funds can be, they're unrestricted. They can be, typically, those are just transferred to the general fund. And so earlier in the fiscal year, when we thought that our hotel motel tax revenues, when they weren't coming in as strongly as we thought, we reduced the amount of the transfer. That was part of one of the budget reductions that we did do. But we ended up with a little more than we anticipated. And like I said, those funds can be used for anything. So.
Thank you. Mayor Henry.
And I might be jumping to an item later on the agenda, but it is our custom in the city of Roswell that when we make requests, we do it at the budget or at the mid-year budget review. We don't allow our departments to come forward with new initiatives. We don't do that because we're looking at these projects in a vacuum, and what we need to do is look at these projects as a whole on what the city is able to fund. I've got a fundamental issue with the Arts Fund coming to us, requesting funds that we would not allow our departments to do. So what my request would be is that this goes in the mid-year budget and we deal with it then, because we need to deal with it where all of the other projects, everything that the city is looking at from our departments to our partner organizations, and that we look at that holistically and not looking at it in a vacuum.
Thank you. Councilmember Wellesley.
Yes, and thank you, Mayor, and I certainly appreciate your concerns. I would just like to underscore that this project was presented and discussed by council back before the budget process, and funds were not allocated just because of the uncertainty of the situation and not knowing exactly, what was going to be available. We do have department heads and organizations coming asking for funds on a regular basis outside the budget cycle. Well, this is not a new initiative.
They don't come forward with new initiatives. They don't come forward with unfunded budget requests.
Okay, this is an ongoing initiative. It was something that was requested as part of the budget cycle. I think a thriving city should be able to support a public art program, and to the extent that it improves a visitor and tourism experience as well as a resident experience, I think it is very worthwhile. And the funds that are available in the hotel motel tax, it makes a lot of sense to direct them towards this project. It would be outside of the regular budgeting process. The alternative is the empty pads. And again, I don't think that a thriving city should have to choose and eliminate that.
Let me just say.
Councilmember Wellesley.
People that raise funds for these things, and they don't rely on city funding for it. That's what a thriving city is all about.
Mayor Henry, with all due respect, earlier in the presentation, Elon showed a chart of how other cities are supporting public art programs that are actually modeled on art around Roswell. So I would just like you to take a look at that and understand that having public support for these programs is extremely important as far as raising grants and as far as raising private support.
Well, and let me just say, I go back to, we've got a process that we hold our departments to. I think we should have a process that we hold our partner organizations to. And what we are telling people is, if you don't get what you want in the budget cycle, just bring it forward and ask for it again.
Again, I think these were unexpected and extraordinary circumstances. I think it was always my understanding and others that they can come back, that any department, any council member, anyone can bring forward a request at any time during the year.
Mr.
And
Fisher,
especially given-
would you
and
please
especially-
opine on this? Because our departments do not come forward with unfunded initiatives
Mary
in
Henry, this was.
on a monthly basis.
This was not a new initiative. You know, I mean, we did this on Monday night. We looked at a similar situation.
Councilmember G.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. My understanding was that the reason why this had to come back now is if we don't make a decision on this now and not at mid-year, because I asked the same question. I said, why can we not wait till mid-year? And the reason why it came back is we have to make the decision now. If not, we will have empty pads next year. And that's the reason there is, and I'm just asking, is that the reason there is a reason why it's here today and not at mid-year? Because of course, I'd rather it be at mid-year, but if there is a pressing issue in which we are at a drop-dead date, which is what I understood, if we're at that drop-dead date, either we have empty pads or not, then that's what I understand today is. And if could you correct me if I was wrong? Because that's the reason I'm considering this today. Otherwise, I agree with Mayor Henry. It should come to mid-year. But if I think the important thing is we know the consequences should we not approve this today. Is the consequences should we not approve this today empty pads next year?
Correct.
Thank you.
Palermo.
Thank you. So I'm hearing a lot of good points. I just have some questions and then kind of some thoughts. So first off, I mean, obviously we're in late September right now. The mid-year when we actually do that process is a good amount of months away from now. And I'm hearing drop dead date. Is the drop dead date, are we feeling is this week, or are we feeling just the drop dead date is certainly before the mid-year, which is many months away from now?
The drop dead, it was the beginning of October when this would go before vote. So that would be October 11th when this would go to vote.
And so basically you're saying if this does not go for a vote on October 11th, then it's basically
October
been,
12th.
if it doesn't go for a vote on October 11th or October 12th, then it basically is too late, and then there's the pads. Am I hearing that correctly?
For next year, yes.
Okay, so meaning even if there was a vote on the 2 weeks later, the 26th or whatever that 2 weeks later date is, then even still that's too late. Am I hearing that correctly?
Well, the problem is that the sort of the kicking out, our commitment to our funders is we go to private funders and we say, hey, we'd really love you to be our sponsor of Art Around. Here's what that project entails. We're a partner with the city and so forth. And they say, okay, great. Well, when does this happen? How does it work? How do we commit our marketing dollars? What's our funding cycle and so forth? So we have to have those things concrete. And also we have grants that we're committing, for example, Georgia Council for the Arts, that we have our partnership with the city. And those dates we've made as malleable as we can. And so we can't continue to kind of put pressure on our other project work, our other life cycles, and our funders by changing dates. So we're kind of at a point now where we've pushed it to this point. And you may remember we had wanted to present earlier, but it's just we're at a point now where we have to be firm on those dates in order to kind of also reinforce the funders that we do have.
Gotcha. Thank you for that clarification. Because I'd say where I stand on it is I certainly don't want to see for a year, just those empty concrete slabs. And then at the same time, I feel the mayor's making some legitimate points regarding just that, it can't just be, one-offs that weren't approved during the budget. I feel like we have to have a more holistic view, and that's where kind of my ideal preference would be the opportunity, whether it's done at that council meeting on the 11th or 12th, or if there is a possible, short delay for this or something along those lines, just to ensure there aren't any urgent burning things from staff that they wish they were requesting. For example, at this week's council meeting, I'm really glad that from a regular budget, we were able to get some money towards park maintenance. And one of the residents in the audience had brought up a back porch that fell through, and someone could have been injured really badly. And just what I want to make sure is there aren't safety issues or other issues that should be addressed, but staff's not allowed to be requesting. That's kind of my preference, because again, I this is something I certainly want to support, but I also want to make sure that we're just kind of having that holistic view if we are doing something out of a typical process. If that makes sense for the council.
Councilmember Zapata?
Thank you. So, quick question. So the total all around Roswell program is $96,000?
Correct.
And I see you're requesting $58,000 from the taxpayers of Roswell?
Yes, sir.
So which represents 60.4%. So my question is why the city of Roswell taxpayer has to pick up 60.4% of the total cost and no less than 50%?
Okay, so your request is for the public art program for the city of Roswell, why the city of Roswell pays 60%?
60.4%, yes.
Excuse me, 60.4% is your question. So, as a capital investment in the flagship program for the city of Roswell, going into its 7th year for monumental scale touring sculptures, we're actually requesting 58, which is in line with previous years of funding. We think that it's achievable with our funders. Every funder that we've gone to has been underfunding. Everyone's been going lower than what we've previously seen from them, including government resources. So we believe that 58 is a very fair match, also doing our contextual research with abutting municipalities and how much they are investing in capital, so in the creative capital. So we think 60% total project goal, which by the way covers the nuts and bolts of the project. So that is a very fair ask out of that percentage.
Okay. Yeah, because I feel like a fair private-public partnership is a 50-50. So 60.4, I don't think is a fair public-private partnership. So my second question is, this request have been part of the budget, this budget, and was just unfunded, but it was not, okay. So now you want to bring it back now before the mid-year review of the budget? Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Judy?
To Councilman Palermo's point, I'd like to understand his feeling whether we move this forward to the committee, to the council meeting, and in the meantime have staff alert us to anything in the meantime, and then we can make this decision at the council meeting. If that's good, I'd like to move it forward and make that decision in the meantime, if that's was your thoughts.
So certainly my preference would have been for it to be a council meeting after the 11th or 12th, but if it seems like that is a drop dead date, then what I see as a possible path forward is not just that staff alerts us, but that staff would bring to that council meeting to discuss, just wearing, all right, we have a request for X dollars, and this is important because if we don't do this, we're going to have a bunch of slabs, and that's not going to be what I think a lot of Roswell residents want to see. And at the same time, staff is showing for approximately that amount of money, here's some things that are on fire or top priorities, or maybe they just show top priorities and we quickly see, all right, those things are not on fire, those things can certainly wait a year, versus, oh, those are things that absolutely residents don't want to see not being done as well. So that'd be my preference, if that's clear to Councilman Judy as well as to staff.
Councilmember Hall?
Thank you. I just have a question about the slabs. So how many slabs are there around Roswell, and how many, would they all be, they would all be vacant? So you would basically have signage on all the slabs and said, we need more funds so that we can provide you art because there's not enough funding for this.
Unfortunately, the slabs would be empty.
Okay. And how many are there?
Approximately 10.
10? Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilmember Zapata?
again, I want this council to consider a 50-50 partnership as a fair partnership up to 50-50. So, yeah, 60.4 bill for the city, I think is fair. I think that 50-50 is much more fair, and I will be supporting a 50-50.
Councilmember Wilson.
Yes, thank you. Just given that we've had a pretty robust discussion and we have a very robust agenda as well, I'd like to make a motion that we move this forward to the October 11th council meeting.
I have a motion to move it forward. Just for clarification, our 11th meeting is moved to the 12th because of
With-
Columbus Day.
And
So
and asking staff, meanwhile, if they could come forward with any, equivalent requests.
To bring it forward to that
To
council
bring it
meeting on the
forward
12th?
To that council meeting as well.
thank you. So we have a motion to move forward. Do I have a second?
I will second that, and we can discuss the percentages there, obviously. So since it's forward at the council
So
meeting
we have a
second.
motion and a second to move this forward along with staff information on priorities for funding. All in favor, raise your hand. It's Councilmember Hall, Councilmember Palermo, Wilsey, Judy, Tyser, and Zapata. All opposed, raise your hand. That's Mayor Henry. Thank you, that passes. Thank you, Alon, for your patience and your understanding, so appreciate
Thank
that.
you, sir, and thank you, council.
Next item on the agenda is Public Works, consideration to sign an agreement between the City of Roswell and St. Charles Square Homeowners Association, Inc., to transfer their private water system to the City of Roswell. And Mr. Skowski.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. This item is fairly straightforward. We have done these in the past with Ashley Manor. This one has been in the works for about 2 years. In your package, you have a memorandum of agreement with the HOA, and Chris has worked out all the details. It's a pretty standard agreement, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to address them. This is the conversion of a private water system to our system after they complete the necessary improvements to their system.
Any questions for Mr. Skowski? Councilmember Zapata?
Thank you. They will require any funds?
No, sir.
Thanks.
Councilmember Hall?
Thank you. Could you just explain or educate me on how these start as private water systems and what this
Sure.
is all about?
Particularly in years gone by, it was very common practice for larger developments to establish a master meter. The city's responsibility stops at a meter. For larger subdivisions, it was often practical to make it a private drive or a private road and private utilities behind that meter, so the houses were not individually metered. That practice has been out of favor at water utility level and the state regulatory level for about 10 years or so, and there's been increasing pressure to not do that anymore, which we don't do, and to eliminate those in cases where we have private systems that are, in some cases, failing or not administered by a licensed water utility professional, for that better explanation. So that's really the pressure, is regulatory pressure, and some of these older systems have very leaky systems.
Any other questions? Yes.
And by doing this, does the city take on the responsibility to upgrade the system for the homeowners, or?
After it's completed to our standards, yes, we will maintain it up to the new meters, which will be installed on each individual home as part of the expense of the contractor and the HOA developer to upgrade their system before we take it over.
Do I have a motion for this item?
So move.
I have a motion by Councilmember Palermo to move forward. Do I have a second? I have a second by Councilmember Zapata. Ooh, all in favor, raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is consideration to award a contract to Wade Goods Company, Inc. for construction of the Longleaf Drive Waterline Replacement Project in an amount of $351,135.
Thank you. This project is one of our typical linear water line replacements of the leakiest line in our system at the present time. It's had 3 main breaks in 2020, I believe, and we won't be doing the entire street because we can't afford it. It's about $350,000. That's going to be our largest project in this year's capital improvement program. We received we requested multiple quotes. The one bid we did receive, because everybody is busy right now, was below our estimate, and we're happy that we have those standby contractors who are available to do this and still honoring their unit prices. So with that, I'll address any questions that you may have, and I can pull up a map if you would like.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. So, okay, so you just touched about the only one bid on the project, two, I see here two, no bid, and I guess the reason you just explained was everybody's busy,
Mm-hmm.
and so this is something that you see moving forward as well, or you see on the past, or what's
We
the situation of
we
not having more
have had
bids?
difficulty attracting multiple bidders on our open bid projects, and our standby contractors right now are busy, and some of them are busy on our work. So two of the no bids there are other contractors of ours that are doing other major jobs for us, and I'll touch on that actually when we get to stormwater in just a moment.
Any other questions or comments? Do I have a motion for this item? Motion approved. Motion by Councilmember Tyser, second by Councilmember Judy. All in favor, raise your hand. I know you did. Councilmember Zapata seconded. I'm sorry, your name just eludes me this morning. All in favor, raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you. Sorry about that, Councilmember Zapata. Item number 5 is, well, yeah, thank you. You just said it out there. Consideration to award a contract to Federal EC LLC for the 245 Saddlehorn Circle pipelining project in the amount of $161,740.90.
So this is a straightforward pipelining contract with one of our standby contracts, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. This is leading into our next item, which is some emergency repairs in stormwater as well. But straightforward pipelining project, it was the highest on our list as of 3 weeks ago.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Michael. So, this another water line replacement, or,
Stormwater culvert lining.
okay,
Yes, sir.
thanks,
So this was discovered as a weak failing culvert as part of our inspection program.
okay.
Any other comments or questions? Do we have a motion for this item?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Zapata. Do I have a second by Councilmember Judy? All in favor, raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you.
The next
Go ahead.
The one thing that I wanted to add here is we have an information item, which is the discussion of 2 emergency stormwater repair purchase orders that we have issued during and following the last heavy rains. We try to identify as many of our weak and failing culverts in advance. Occasionally, the weather identifies them for us, or our citizens do, and these 2 emergency POs, one on 140 Ridge Way and the second at Hembry Road at North Meadow Parkway, were both discovered within the last 3 weeks, and we issued a request for an emergency purchase order. In both cases, we had a sinkhole opening up next to a sidewalk on Hembry Road, and the other one was alerted to us by residents on the Ridgeway area. And I believe you may have even received an email related to that one when Ms. Beck brought that to our attention. And with that, I'll address any questions. These are both failing culverts. They are in a more serious state of failure than we like to see, and we're moving one of them, Hembry Road. We have already initiated those based on Michael's signature. That's a $209,000 task order to one of our standby contractors who's very busy. And the 140 Ridgeway emergency requisition was, I believe, $137,000. The last point I just want to mention is, as of right now, we will not be doing any more stormwater culvert replacement projects unless they are emergency repairs for the remainder of this fiscal year. This pretty much drains our capital budget down to about $136,000, and we're going to hold that off in case we have any other similar events. Be happy to answer any questions. Thank you for approving it, Michael.
Councilmember Wilson, go ahead. It's just for discussion, just to let you all know, but thank you for that support. So. Yeah. Thank you, Dan. Item number 7 is moving to community development. It's consideration of the scope for the revisions to the Unified Development Code. I have received some requests to.
So, Michael, based on the emails that this mayor and council have exchanged, and which is all public record, I would like to move this to be a first item on the October 12th committee meeting, and I encourage, as always, for any of this council to meet one-on-one on October 11th or October 12th with both Lenore and Jackie, as well as our new ComDev director that was announced.
I have a motion by Councilmember Palermo to defer this item to the October 12th mayor and council meeting. Do I have a second?
Second, we've heard the emails. Committee.
That's right. It's on the same day. That's right.
Yes.
Second by Councilmember Judy. All in favor, raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you for
Actually, is
that.
it? Whoa.
I'm sorry. All opposed? Councilmember Hall. The next item on the agenda moves to transportation consideration for the mayor and/or interim city administrator to sign a contract modification with E.R. Snell Contractor, Inc. for the State Route 9 Atlanta Street at Oxbow Road intersection T-Splosh project in an amount not to exceed $616,802. I would start this off by saying that this item has additional information that we believe should be considered prior to addressing this particular item. There is a full report that you all are aware of that is from a third party about this project. It's been promised to be released by the end of September, which is actually tomorrow at the very latest. So all available information should be available and reviewed before this item is to be considered. So with that, I would request a deferral of this item until all of the available information can be reviewed, at which time this item can be brought back for consideration. So do I have a motion to defer this item?
Motion to defer.
I have a motion to defer by Councilmember Judy. Do I have a second?
Deferring till when?
Till after, to the next committee or whenever.
I didn't specify, I just wanted to give time to get the information in, so it's up to you all.
I think next
As
committee,
long as it's after the, report comes out.
which is this week, it sounds like,
Yeah.
right? So I think to the next committee.
I would say the next committee meeting is on the same night as the council meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And
The
so
next
that may-
transportation committee?
The next
Defer.
transportation
Yes,
committee?
please.
Okay. So I have a motion to defer to the next transportation committee. Do I have a second? Second by Mayor Henry. All in favor, raise your hand. And that looks unanimous, so thank you very much. I'm sorry I keep getting off track here. Item number 9 is discussion of partnering with the North Fulton Community Charities for the installation of an ADA-compliant pedestrian crosswalk with rectangular rapid flashing beacons and raised median on Elkins Road near the North Fulton Community Charities. And Mohammed, I'll let you introduce the item.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. So we have a request for a partnership from North Fulton Community Charities. So all they have requested is a crosswalk on Elkins to connect their two facilities on either side of Elkins Road. But when we conducted our initial analysis of their request, it seems like because of the side distance issues, we gotta have a raised concrete median and a rapid rectangular flashing beacon to go with this crosswalk. Otherwise, it would not be safe for the pedestrians. So our recommendation is to include an RRFB and a median along with the crosswalk to connect the two facilities for North Fulton Community Charities. So we looked at it and came up with two options, both are going to be with an RRFB and a raised concrete island. So option one, we're saying could be a 20 feet small raised concrete median island with, red colored pattern on the surface. We have several of those around the city. Option two could be, thinking about our recently adopted strategic master plan, where it's suggesting for us to look at landscaping for every project that we do. So the option two comes with that in mind. We're thinking about 100 feet long concrete island with some landscaping in it, and it could be maintained by the North Fulton Community Charities going forward. So this is just how it looks. It's looking looking north towards Hembry Park. The two facilities of the NFCC on either side of Elkins Road here. And if you look at this one, the graphic on the left shows you that little crosswalk and a raised concrete median. We could make it red with stamped concrete. And on the right-hand side, you see the crosswalk with a longer median that's shown in green, showing it could be landscaped on the top. And this is just a rendering. The RFB actually is flashing here. So that's the crosswalk and the median to connect the two facilities for NFCC. And this is the other option that shows the landscaping in the longer median. So, very rough planning level construction estimate is about $30,000 to $50,000, and it'll just depend on when we are ready to procure it. It'll just depend on the construction pricing of that time, since construction pricing is just very uncertain these days. So that's why we're giving you a larger range of cost. So the NFCC there, they're willing to ask their other partners as well for some financial help to complete the project. Another option that the city has is, working with our grants division. City could apply for CDBG funding on behalf of NFCC. And if that goes through and we get that funding, the money could be available by fall of 2022. And talking to NFCC, their preference is not to wait that long and fund it earlier if possible. And if you look at in your packet, there's a request letter from NFCC. It talks about their 40 employees and 200 volunteers every day, and them serving like 1,000 families every month. So they're just making the case that it's a public need. So a few options that we have here, they are requesting the city could fund 100%. The improvement is going to be in the public right of way, so the city could fund, but we don't really have any funding for this fiscal year in the speed management and pedestrian safety item. The other option you could choose is, suggest for NFCC to pay the 100%. They could get some help from their other partners, so they could pay for it. You could suggest a cost share between the city and NFCC at a 50-50 or whatever you think is reasonable. The CDBG funding is an option if it gets approved. And no matter which option we choose, we'd prefer to design. It is small enough, minor enough, we could do the design in-house, so it's not going to cost the city any money. And we would still want to lead the construction of it to make sure it gets constructed the right way and the way we want it. So that could just be the partnership offer from the city doing the design and leading the construction. So it's really up to you. And if you give us some guidance, we can coordinate further with NFCC on how they would want to proceed.
So there's some information presented, looking for guidance from Muhammad. Councilmember Judy?
So, thank you. Going to this building, the new building. So the new building houses the offices where intake is, all that stuff on the right side if you're looking that way down the street. On the left side is their store where they food and all that. And so the reason for this is people are going from intake to the store, vice versa, across the street constantly with kids and people all the time, and that's causing the safety issue.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what they're suggesting, that there is a lot of movement between the two facilities. And really the safest way where we would want people to cross is we have an existing traffic signal at Highway 9 and Alkins. So that's like over 800 feet away. So we could suggest that, hey, it's not convenient, but a safe crossing exists, but it's over 800 feet away one way. So if you want to use that, you go 800 feet and then you come back another 800 feet. So people are not going to do that. They're just going to cross, just directly across. So providing this safe option, it makes sense. But, of course, it costs money.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Wilsey?
Yes, I agree. Providing a safe crossing between those two buildings and the services that they provide to the community is very important. Question, and you and I had emailed about this earlier regarding a different project, the funds for the speed management, pedestrian safety, those are also eligible for ARPA funds, is that correct?
Yes, it is actually listed as one of the requests. So I'm actually not sure where that is in the process, and it's definitely eligible, and it is listed as a request from
Right,
staff.
so that would be a source. So, and then I guess my other question is, if there was a sharing, does that impact, kind of the source of funds, whether it's CDBG or from the ARPA funds? Related, if we did a shared cost within FCC versus 100%?
I wouldn't think so. I think any partnership, any contribution could only help with,
Right, sure, absolutely,
cost sharing.
right. Okay, great, thank you.
Councilmember Palermo?
Thank you. So I am certainly always a fan of raised islands, both for obviously the pedestrian safety that it adds in addition to automobile safety. And just, realizing it's not realistic to say walk the 800 feet. We had this exact discussion at Roswell High School, and glad we all unanimously supported a raised pedestrian refuge there as well. So I have a couple questions, and then I want to share my thoughts on your different proposals. So you've got the 20-foot concrete proposed, as well as a 100-foot landscaped proposed. And two thoughts come to mind. One is, my hesitation is that the city ends up being responsible for the maintaining the landscape part, and it's been my understanding that that does become costly over the years, because there's actually a lot of medians that we've been looking at doing over the years, and we've been making sure not to do landscape because of those expenses. So that's a concern I have, and that's something that brings me to the concrete one, just because that was the decision we made on some other ones in really active areas. But then my question is also, why is it 20-foot concrete or 100 landscaped? For example, why isn't it potentially, should we decide between 20-foot concrete or 20-foot landscaped?
Yeah, we could. So like I said, these are just the two options. And remember, I made a reference to the strategic master plan where it suggests to consider landscaping options as part of every project. So that's the reason
And
you are seeing this. And like I said, we could play with the length of the median. We could offer it to NFCC that, hey, we would prefer landscaping if you agree to maintain it for life. We could make it smaller to adjust whatever funding is available, however much they could secure from their partners. We could just cap it at that and then design accordingly to make it a smaller.
So my kind of gut reactions are that I prefer just going 20 feet over 100, just because I think 20 feet addresses the safety needs and would be cheaper. Again, I lean towards the concrete because, I guess technically if they were really adamant that they want it to be landscaped and they're willing to commit to permanently doing that's fine. But I just feel like that's a large commitment where I'd probably feel more comfortable if we went more similar to a lot of the other ones that we've done recently. And then as for the choices on kind of how it's paid for, my preferences would be either they get some partner help and pay 100%, or we do CDBG, or we do a cost share. So those are kind of the three choices that I'm supportive of. And it kind of goes back to a similar discussion we had earlier, which is just the reason why I'm hesitant to want to support the city paying 100%, because that's when it comes into, all right, citywide, is this where there's the absolute most activity, safety concerns, all those different aspects. Whereas in if we're doing a cost share or CDBG, or they're paying for it with partners, then certainly I think it makes it much easier to of course prioritize this.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. So what is the probabilities to obtain the grant?
I'm sorry, what?
The probabilities to obtain the grant for this project?
For the CDBG grant?
Right.
So that's something that they apply for every year, we go
Yeah, I know,
through that
the
cycle.
probabilities to approve this project inside, they propose different projects. every year.
It is a grant it's a application that's eligible. I already checked with Charles, so the probability is as good as you all choosing that one to fund or not.
Okay,
Because it is an application that is, that we could use for CDBG.
okay, because every year we assign some CDBG funds
That's
to
correct.
them, so we can
That's
just
correct.
deduct from,
Now, they
For
may
the
have to
future.
prioritize if they have other applications that they want to apply for, or this one, that would, that's what we could,
well, but they have
discuss
to
with
decide,
them.
I
But
would,
it is an eligible use of the CDBG funds.
yeah, when you have limited funds, you cannot do, sometimes you have to prioritize. If this is a priority for them, then put it on the application with any other project that they might be considering, and
It
but
is
we
an
can go ahead
eligible project.
and build this and wait for the CDBG, and then we just deduct from whatever money we were willing to give them, we just take it off, $30,000 to $50,000, whatever it costs, and move on. And
Councilmember Tyser.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions and a quick thought. First of all, these things, these raised beacons, the beacons seem to be state of the art. They're going in all over the place around here. I've seen them in other states. It seems to be a popular item these days. What is it that's driving, we've got other ones out in the city that don't have a raised median. What is it that's driving the need for a raised median immediately on this one? Which then winds up taking time. And the second part of my question will be, is it possible to, with a reasonable amount of speed, get a raised beacon and a crosswalk, or get a beacon and a crosswalk out there before we go through the whole process of deciding when and how to get a median?
So that's, so it's the vertical curve in the roadway that's requiring us to look into options of more than just a crosswalk.
Okay, thank you.
The visibility is an issue, and absolutely, these raised concrete islands, they provide a refuge for the pedestrians halfway, just in case they don't feel, or if there is cars who are not necessarily going to yield to the flashing lights. So this definitely provides an added safety if we do the raised concrete island.
So it's a curve and it's a sightline issue.
There is a side distance issue at site, that's why we're suggesting measures.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions and following up on Councilmember Tyser's. I travel that road a lot to the park, and the question about why the raised median and the sight line, I mean, it's, could you go to do you have the picture?
So see how so it's a vertical curve. If you are coming this way in your car, up the hill, you may not be able to see a pedestrian, but you may be able to see the RRFB, the flashing lights of RRFB, which obviously are much taller than the height of a pedestrian. And then again, the raised concrete median, it just provides a refuge halfway for pedestrian in case they cannot, if it's a slow moving pedestrian, if it's a wheelchair, they just have a safe option, safe refuge halfway in case they cannot get across all the way. And these medians, they definitely get driver's attention as well. It is an object in the roadway that's raised and it's visible, so it gets the attention of the motorist. So, they hopefully the most reasonable drivers would go a little slower if they see a raised median.
Okay, and then just to follow up on that, is it possible to make the project in 2 phases where the city's participating in a cost share, where we could provide the beacons first, and then when the opportunity for the CDBG funds comes and North Fulton Charities opts to use that money, we can do the raised median part at that time?
We could do that, an RFB gives you the visibility at the height you need it.
So that would be the most important piece first, and then the other one.
And the refuge
follow.
island could come later, yes.
And then I have been observing some drivers at some of these flashing beacons that we have. And my question is, they flash yellow, and why do they not flash red?
Yeah, they can't. If we want them to flash red, then we're talking about a pedestrian hybrid beacon, a hawk, as we used to call them. So that would be like a traffic signal having the red balls flashing. That's where they must stop. Drivers must stop at a red light. But these RRFBs are designed and approved only just to alert the motorist that, hey, there is pedestrian activity in the area. They're not even offered in red color.
So we can't change them to red, because I've seen people crossing and cars not even stopping on the flashing yellow.
We see that, compliance is an issue, but it's definitely a lot better than not having them.
And in Alpharetta, they have flashing red lights, and the sign says you don't have to stop on the flashing red light, only if there's a pedestrian in the.
That's the definition of a hawk, the pedestrian hybrid beacon. We have one in front of the Vickery Mills Elementary School, and the other one that we have been working on for the longest, between City Hall and Canton Street. Hopefully we'll have that installed.
So there's no in between, it's either one of these or one of these?
There is no, we could do a regular pedestrian signal with red lights. That's what we had up until not too long ago in front of the Chattahoochee Nature Center on Willio Road. That got knocked down as an accident, but the cost is no different than a regular hawk. So the cost difference between an RFB and a hawk or a pedestrian traffic signal is just huge. It'll just cost a lot more, several folds more to do the red light indications.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Wiltie.
No, so my question, and I think we may have some interesting compromises. I think mine was just the urgency of pedestrian safety, and I was just concerned that going through a CDBG cycle would be a year, 12 months or so out, correct?
Yes.
Money from CSUP, right. But it sounds like there are some other options that we can,
Yes, just
Can
an
you-
RFB with ramps and a crosswalk. We're
Right,
talking
right.
probably 20.
and then
less than
add the
20.
raised medians and the refuge later,
And do the
or
refuge
partner with
island
North
later.
Charities to do that.
Councilmember Zapata, did you still have, I think you did a minute ago, I don't know if you still do or not.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, I got a lot of information
okay.
after I raised my hand, but, so, yeah, going back to Councilman Tyser point, I'm sure there might be some sort of guidelines in terms of how much traffic goes on the road, how heavy traffic it is versus having just painting yellow, so people cannot move into the middle, instead of white, paint it yellow, instead of red, just paint it, and even maybe put lighting. I see in many places that you have the yellow flashing on the cross, not only on the side, but also on the road, you have the yellow. So are those options for this kind of traffic that we have on Elkin Road, something that could be contemplated and avoid a structure there and
We can definitely study the RRFB with the crosswalk only. We could definitely keep an eye. We can easily ask and observe for drivers' compliance to an RRFB with a crosswalk and reevaluate the need for a median at a later date. We do not have anywhere in the city those in-pavement flashing lights. They are, I'm sure they're successful in other areas. It's just that if there's a vehicle approaching, it kind of blocks the flashing lights for the vehicle behind them. Because they're in the pavement, and if there's one vehicle approaching, they'll see those flashing lights in the pavement, but the vehicle behind them may not be able to see those flashing lights. So that's the reason the RRFB, where the lights are like 7-8 feet above the ground.
no, I'm saying both. I'm recommending to study to have both.
We could do
the
both.
post in each side, flashing this side, and then on the ground. And that might be
Sure.
just a solution to avoid to have more heavy
Yeah.
structure on the road.
Yeah, those lights are not cheap either, and every time we resurface, then you gotta reinstall those lights. So that's one little problem. The median stays, the resurfacing could be done around it, but if we put in-street flashing lights, every time we resurface, which is like 15, 20 years, but still, you have to replace the lights.
Thank you.
Mayor Henry.
I don't really want to design the crosswalk today. I think you all can handle that. I'm looking at funding, and I would support the application to CDBG for funding on this project.
Any other comments or input for Mohammed? I think you've got good guidance to work with NFCC to try to put a package together if we're good for now. So anything else you need?
So I guess we are offering them, basically, either they could fund 100% and our share would be the in-house design and leading the construction. They could reach out to their partners, and the city is definitely open to applying for CDBG funding. And, if that's their preference, then.
And I think you might have also heard to take a look at it in two phases.
To phase it,
Yes,
correct?
absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that input. Item number 10 is consideration for the mayor and/or interim city administrator to authorize execution of a task order in an amount not to exceed $27,200 with the city's on-call consultant Vanessa Hangen-Brustlin, Inc., which is VHB, for the design of the State Route 140 landscape medians project.
Thank you, Michael. So this is the Holcomb Bridge Road landscaped median islands item, and gave us $540,000 in a recent activity, and this is the FY21 money basically that was allocated towards installation of these medians. So we are ready to initiate a design task order. One of our on-call consultants in an amount not to exceed $27,200. So the work would include for them to do the design and, detail the construction specifications for two landscape medians, 50 to 150 feet long. And when we say landscaping, we're only talking about low-rise bushes, not trees. This is a state road corridor, so we're only talking low-rise bushes. And the locations of those two medians, we have not obviously finalized them. So the consultant would look at a few different options and locate them somewhere between Old Alabama Road and Nesbitt Ferry Road along Holcomb Ridge Road. And so when we have a concept ready from the consultant, we'll do some in-house public outreach just to save some money on that concept before we proceed with the detailed design. We'll reach out to the area subdivisions and do some social media posts to get public input. So this is just a graph. This shows a graphic that shows Holcomb Bridge Road, and the two red lines are kind of the project limit. So somewhere between that limit, which is, it's a lengthy corridor. It's like over 4 or 5 miles. So we're just thinking two medians for now because of the available funds. So we can always build upon, once we get the approval from GDOT and, construct these two medians and see how the public likes them. We can always put more money in a future project to add more and build upon what we construct as part of this effort. So, we are recommending approval of the task order to begin the design, and we have that 540 available. And if you approve this, it'll come to a future council meeting for approval.
Any discussion or question? Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. So what can you tell us about Vanessa Hangen-Brustlin? What's the references, what the job they've been doing in different cities?
Yes.
What can you tell us about them?
Yeah, so they are one of our on-call consultant, So that means the city, of course, with an approval from mayor and council, we have selected them to be on call. And they have been one of our on-call consultants for
About 9 years.
9 years.
6 to 9 years.
Yeah, so they have done several projects for us, so they are a good consultant. I'm sure their work quality is going to be good on this project as well as it has been on the past projects.
Thank you.
Councilmember Tyser. Did you not have your hand up a minute ago? Sorry. Councilmember Judy.
Before we approve any funding, we do have permission from GDOT to put islands on the road.
So that's going to be part of the process. We still need a permit from GDOT. And of course, it's going to depend on what we are going to design, how big, how wide, what type of landscaping. They're going to look at all that before they give us generally they are open to do medians. We did medians as part of our westbound through lane and the northbound off-ramp project on Holcomb Bridge. So we have those medians. GDOT is okay, but they'll issue us a site-specific and design-specific permit for us to move forward. So this is, not going to be very quick, but we need to just start somewhere.
So there's no promise from GDOT or way to get a promise from GDOT that we can do this before we spend $27,000 on design. Because my worry is we spend $27,000 on design and GDOT says, nope, it's our road, you can't put the islands in.
So we don't have any guarantee as of today because we just don't know what we are planning to put in and where. But, it's not that we're going to just spend the $27,000, design something, and then put it in front of GDOT. When we have a concept, as we are going to go to the public at the same time, we could definitely initiate conversations. We actually had one of the recent meetings with the GDOT District 7. We initiated the conversation, talked about what kind of permits are we going to need if we do a median island, if we do landscaping on top of that median. So there's different permits that apply. So they are aware, they know it's coming. And one of the benefit of using an experienced consultant, and of course we have enough experience working with GDOT, is that, we know the people, we know generally what they would be okay with, so we will not spend all the money and then go to GDOT and then get a denial. That's not going to happen. So we'll take it, one step at a time. And if they have an issue with that, we'll try and accommodate their request and their, policies, their guidelines into our design.
Councilmember Wilson.
Thank you, and thank you for the discussion today. I think this is going to be a very welcomed infrastructure improvement for East Roswell. It's a road that I am on dozens of times every day, so I think it'll be very welcomed by the residents and also the businesses, and hopefully can help be a part of an economic development effort. My question is just regarding being very familiar with the road. What are some of the criteria that you would be looking for as far as placement? I mean, I'm sure you'll be looking at left turns and commercial areas and that sort of thing, but even the topography, just trying to get a good idea, because I know as people start to talk about it, they are interested in kind of what areas would be most likely to see the landscaped medians.
Yeah, that could be that maybe we could receive some guidance from you on that today. It's just that, do we want to focus on some operational benefits? Do we want to focus on aesthetic elements? There are stretches of Holcomb Bridge with the just pavement in the middle that's not really being used much for anything. It just looks like a wide open roadway for like a mile. So if we could put one in between there, that would just give the roadway a little narrow look, so the drivers, hopefully they'll be a little bit more respectful on the speeds there. We could put it closer to a signalized intersection where you could see some better, more operational benefits as well. So it just depends, and, if you have any specific guidance on that, we'd be happy to receive it today. If not, we'll just work with our consultants and see, where the better value is.
I mean, I think that's a very interesting discussion. I know the area that you're talking about where it's a safety consideration. I also think we just need to weigh that, where there might be some commercial and placemaking, creating a neighborhood center benefits as well. Certainly worth getting some public input and more discussion on, and your recommendations of that design firm as well.
Absolutely, and just looking at that East Roswell Economic Action Committee report, their vision for the area is, of course, a lot more than just this.
Sure.
So I suggest, with the available funding, we do this, considering it as, like a little pilot project, and then build upon it.
Right,
We want to see how GDOT is going to react, what they're going to allow, how the public is going to provide feedback, and then how the public is going to like the end product. So, and then definitely going forward in the future, when more funding is available, we could definitely build upon.
Great, thanks.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. I just wanted to note that I have a question on a informational item after this conversation is done.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mike. I guess what I'm thinking about is I'd like to see you do your in-house virtual public outreach on the concept and bring back to us a picture of where you'd put these things and what they might look like, similar to what you just showed us with the signals, before we spend $27,000 in design them.
So we're gonna spend some of the money to come up with the concept, and then go to public, and then bring it back here for a discussion on the concept. For us to go to public, we gotta have something. Or if you choose, we could just ask for public opinion on your drawings. We may get, just a widespread input from public that may not be enough for us to, lean one way or the other. We're talking about a 5-mile long corridor and 2 small medians somewhere, so the public input may be, all over the place, so it may be hard to.
I guess what I'm saying is, can you just tell us where you think they should go? And, then we can make a call on whether we want to ask GDOT if they can go there, and if we need to then go into some cost design. That's my question. That was my thought on it.
We could.
Do as you wish.
We could take that approach. We'll spend some staff time to locate, and then get some public feedback on that.
We have an idea already of a couple locations. The main one would probably be between Martin Road and the Park 83 apartments. That's the 5-lane section that Mohammed talked about earlier. There's one that could be up by Holcomb Woods Parkway, just on the east side there. Between Old Alabama and Holcomb Woods, there's a lot of commercial driveways that we probably can't fit one in between there. And then there's one towards Scott Road that we've looked at. We're really looking to try to stay on the tangents at this point, because if you get into the curves, then you have to account for drainage, and it does get more costly, and there are more issues like that. So then we would probably try to look at one near Champions Green as well. Those are kind of the 3 to 4 locations that we would at least look at to narrow down to the 2 for now, and then possibly expand to those 4 in the future.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. Yeah, earlier you mentioned, there's the opportunity in some areas where the bigger benefit is just aesthetics because it's a lot of concrete, and there's some areas where there's actually operational benefits to having them. And you're asking, kind of what's a preference? I'll tell you, certainly for me, I I kind of want all of the above, realizing that's not what we funded yet. So I definitely do want you having the perspective of what is the biggest priority right now, knowing that my hope is we're going to build more in the future. But I do want to point out that operational benefits, I think, are important. And something I kind of think about is kind of when crossing, because I think you'd mentioned there's operational benefits when it's coming up to a light. And because an example I'll give is actually where, when I cross over to the makerspace from the commercial area across the street and vice versa, I certainly go to that stoplight for the crosswalk and the safety. But when you're crossing over that many lanes and there's no median, it's kind of stressful because you feel like if you're going to be stuck in the middle and not make it all the way, you're really fearing for your life. Whereas if there is one of those pedestrians that kind of lead up to right there where that light is, it makes it feel a little safer if you do end up getting stuck in the middle of the road crossing over. So I think that's something that's a benefit. And again, related to that, I think there are benefits to kind of near the commercial areas where potentially people might be crossing over, and kind of just creating a greater sense of safety as well as actual safety. But again, I think really there's a lot more needed than what we've approved so far, and so my hope is this is just beginning.
Councilmember Zapata?
Thank you, Michael. So, I want to follow up on the comment from Councilmember Judy. I think that this is related to my first question when I said, what is the expertise of the consultant in these kind of projects? What would be the involvement of GDOT from day one? Because if you involve GDOT from day one, you have better chances to come with something that they will approve. If you just show up with a design that they never saw in their life, then, you have the probability to say, start from square one. So I think two things. One, to get a better understanding about the expertise of this consultant firm on these kind of projects with GDOT, on this kind of road, and then the level of involvement from day one from GDOT on this project. So they might say, you can move it here, then it's perfect. So that is my first point. And then I would like also to follow up on the comment from Councilmember Tyser here that, I'm sure you have constraints on these 5 miles or so you were talking about, and GDOT knows this as a palm of your hands. So, you have constraints. So you say, here, I can't, I would love, but I can't, So then you just mentioned, I guess, 3 or 4 places that, RDOT identify. So then I think that, since you know more or less 3 or 4 potential, and you know what kind of design normally is done on GDOT's roads, what is permitted or what have been permitted in the past, then you can come back to us and say, look, we identified these 3 or 4 areas that we can do that, and GDOT in general approved this kind of design. And then, you show us a little picture, and then we move on and say, oh, look, okay, go to the final design with the consultant. But at least we know where it will be possible. And then, look, Councilmember Palermo said, obviously, the best is operational plus aesthetics, first priority. So if it's you have the 4 potential places. Okay, those 2 are operational and aesthetic. Okay, let's focus on those 2 first. And then you can say, look, on those 2 places, GDOT in general approved this kind of project. Okay, what are they? You show us a picture, whatever GDOT has around Georgia, this project, and then, we say, okay, these 2 places and these 2 options of design, let's go with this one, then move it to a consultant that from day one involve GDOT in the process, so then we can have a shorter term for construction, and then we have better probabilities to be approved by GDOT. That would be my approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, on the expertise of the firm, we're talking about a national level firm, so we have no doubt about their expertise and their ability to work with GDOT and design the product that would eventually get approved by GDOT. And like I said, we already mentioned to GDOT at a recent meeting, just like a couple weeks ago, we do a quarterly meeting with the district, so they are aware this is coming. We got their initial input on what type of permits we would need if we are talking about a median. And on top, if you're talking about landscaping on that median, so we just wanted to get their initial input on the type of permits we would need. And I think we got the guidance that we want to look at the 3 or 4 locations in-house first, and then maybe get some public input on that, and then bring it back to committee before going any forward with the actual design work. So it'll just take some in-house work to get it ready, get the public input, and bring it back to committee, and then we'll engage the consultant. And I guess the council item for this could wait till the time we bring it back to another committee, if that's the guidance as I understand it.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. My question is, if we identify 4 ideal or multiple places for these islands, is there opportunity for GDOT to participate? If Roswell says we're going to do 2, will GDOT pay for 2?
We can definitely ask. I can tell you that can't hurt to ask. You know, they don't have a bunch of money sitting around either.
Well, they're probably going to get a lot of money from the government, federal government.
Absolutely. And then they have
Yeah.
definitely more than we do. You're right about that. But of course, they have a lot of needs and a big. But anyways, can't hurt to ask. Like we asked for the pedestrian hybrid Beacon and Hawk, and they agreed to pay for it. So can't hurt to ask. So we'll add that to our list of things to do. We'll engage.
Yeah, that'd be terrific to see if we could partner with them and finish that off and get maybe 4 of them done.
Okay, thank you. Good suggestion.
Is there any other comments or questions? Is there a motion for this item?
Do we need one, since he said he was just going to take it in-house and then bring it back to us, and then we take it to council?
Yes, I would like to have that as a motion.
So I motion that they design this in-house, do public input, bring it back to committee before we engage the consulting firm.
I think that'd be perfect. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Tyser. All in
Is
favor?
that, I just want to be clear, is that completely clear, Mohammed? Does that work with what transportation?
Absolutely. So we do the concept in-house and get public input in-house, and then bring it back to a committee before we engage the consultant.
All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. I know we have an information item question, Mohammed, if you'll hang around for just a minute, but we have 9:45 hard stop, and I have another item that's already been deferred once, so I'm going to introduce item number 12, which is Committee Member Wilsey, discussion of the process for partner organizations to bring requests and reports to committee, and then we can go back to the information item if she has a question.
Yes, no, this should be quick. This is just a request for staff to take a look at a process and kind of memorializing the process for partner organizations and other organizations that do work and report to the city, to come to committee, to make reports to council. We seem to have a pretty inconsistent process. I asked Marley pulled records from like the last 10 years, and it seems like most partner organizations or outside organizations, from Friends of Mimosa, Friends of Bullock, Roswell Inc., Visit Roswell, Historic Roswell Beautification Association, North Fulton Community Charities, and the Arts Fund have contacted the admin department head or another department head that they were associated with Rec and Parks, and that item has appeared either separately as that organization or under that department. This particular request from the Roswell Arts Fund was handled a little differently, so I'd just like to see if we could have a very consistent process going forward so that everyone knew what the rules are.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on that?
I
Mayor
would like
Henry?
to make sure that the partner organizations follow the same procedure that our departments do.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Zapata?
Yeah, I have a question. I understand that if requests we're talking about related to budget, they make a request during the budget season.
it is other kind of request that, I would like to know but if request is referring to budget, related to the budget, then, during the budget discussion is, and the reports, what we talk about reports, what is the idea here, or?
Well, just recently, we had a report from the Friends of Bullock Hall. We've had reports from Friends of Mimosa. We also had Visit Roswell here just last week. And over the past 10 years, we've had a number of requests from partner organizations that actually came outside of the budget cycle. I'm just asking for a consistent process so that the partner organizations know who to contact and what to expect when they go through the process. Something to kind of just to make it a little bit more streamlined for the partner organization as well as for council and for staff.
Councilor Palermo.
Yeah, so I think I agree with everything everybody's said, but I certainly want to call out and support some of the aspects of Councilmember Wilsey bringing up. I think it is really important that we have consistency, because I think she's making a valid point. I think I've seen certainly a number of situations where a partner organization's request is within the department on what's affected, which is the way I think it should be, and then we've seen some exceptions which lead to inconsistency, and so I think certainly, my opinion is it makes sense for it to be what we've seen the majority of the time, where it's in the relevant department, which because I think by having it as a quote other item and by a certain council member, I think it politicizes things, and that's at no fault of any of the council members, because that was the process that a former individual at the city, not elected, had kind of created as a new process. But I think it really makes sense just to be in the area that it belongs, and that it's a consistent process. But I do agree with what the mayor brought up, that they certainly should have specific guidelines and requirements to follow, just like staff does. And just I think really, just and making it clear that, hey, the annual budget time is the time for when this happens. But again, if we're going to have exceptions, we have to be clear what those are, because we certainly don't want some exceptions benefiting, one group and not benefiting another group. So I think it's a good point, and I agree with this discussion.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Henry.
Yes, I think consistency is very important. Our partner organization should go through the same process that our departments do as far as requesting funding. On the other hand, we've got another parallel thing that where our partner organizations come to give us updates on how they're doing. I would encourage that. I would encourage that they update us on where they are, how well they're doing, and not ask for money, but the separate portion would be, if you're asking for money, you need to go through this process. This is what we expect from our departments. This is what we expect from you, and have a clear process.
Sure. Okay. Anything else? I think we got some direction on that, so thank you. Councilmember Hall, you had an information item question, I believe?
Yes, I did. I just noticed that it's regarding the T-SPOS collection update. In July of 2021, we collected 105% of the budgeted amount. Mm-hmm. And my question just is, where are we on that T-SPOS? Are we over 100% of total collections? And then if you could just help me understand, the extra money goes to fund second and third tier projects. I just want clarification on that. And I know that we recently included about $500,000 that we're short in T-SPOS in the second T-SPOS. So all these questions are a little bit together. Are we over or under in our collection of the T-SPOS? And potentially, do we need to take from the second T-SPOS for projects in this original T-SPOS?
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, I appreciate you reading through the info item. Nobody asked a question ever, so I like it that there is a question on the info item. So, on the T-SPOS 1, and the tier 1, that's supposed to be 85% of the collection. And I think we are still around that mark. We're not over the 85%, and we are we are still supposed to deliver the tier 1 projects out of T-Splost 1 before we can think about tier 2 and tier 3 projects on the T-Splost 1 list. And yes, we requested $5 million actually for the Big Creek Parkway project, specifically for the extension of Warsaw. The Big Creek Parkway all the way to Warsaw is what we asked for. And does that answer everything?
Thank you. So overall, we're not over in our collections on T-Splost 1.
Yeah, no, we are still at the 85, we're still below the 85% mark, even if you project. So the last few months, have been good. You see 105% collection for July, but earlier years, it was, mostly in the 90s. I even actually remember like 88%, 92%, 94%. It's mostly that. So we are below, projected to still be below 85% mark when we're done collecting in March of 2022.
Is that good? All right, I don't have anything else on my agenda, so we are adjourned. Thank you all.